Good afternoon everyone, we are Group 3. Today we are going to talk about different countries' clinical waste policy. So first, we will talk about the definition of the clinical waste. Clinical waste refers to discarded material from healthcare facility, like shops, bandaged blood, or other infectious substances that may be infectious, pathogenic, or radioactive. If we have not proper disposed of the clinical waste, therefore posing a certain degree of hazard to the environment or people, like hepatitis will be transmitted by the clinical waste. So now we will move on to see the different countries' clinical waste policy.
Let's talk about the medical waste management policy in different countries. In China, medical waste belongs to hazardous waste, but the medical waste management is not always a primary concern problem. Till the end of 2003, the China government have enacted the first act addressing the control of the medical waste officially, Medical Waste Control Act, which required the management of the medical waste properly and centralized disposal of the medical waste, regulation and standards for classification, handling procedures, clarify the responsibility of the hospital and other producers for collecting, transporting, and disposing of the medical waste. According that, medical waste produced by the healthcare facility is classified into the 5 categories, including the infectious waste, pathological waste, sharp waste, pharmaceutical waste, and chemical waste. By the end of 2021, China have 540 centralized medical waste disposal units, which could dispose of the 2 million tons of the medical waste annually, a 39% raise compared with 2019.
In Hong Kong, clinical waste is defined under the Waste Disposal Ordinance, and it provides a legal definition which all the healthcare professionals in healthcare sectors should be following. To provide for the control and regulation of the whole path of handling clinical waste, the Clinical Waste Control Scheme has been in place since August 2011. The objective of the scheme is to uphold the public health standard through effective management of the waste, and the scheme comprises 5 key elements shown here. The categorization of clinical waste in Hong Kong is divided into 6 groups. Group 1 is used and contaminated sharps like syringe, needles, and ampoules. Group 2 is laboratory waste like laboratory stock cultures. Group 3 is human and animal tissues, organs, and body parts, and dead animals. Infectious materials with pathogens like Ebola virus is classified as Group 4. Group 5 is any surgical dressing, swabs, and any other waste that containing blood. The director may also specify other waste as Group 6 if he thinks such wastes are likely to have infectious materials on them. Clinical waste in Hong Kong is requiring to send it to Chemical Waste Treatment Center at Cheng Yi. The treatment center will use incineration to handle a maximum of 24 tons of clinical waste per day. Although the COVID-19 outbreak poses a challenge to the facility as the clinical waste dramatically increased, the clinical waste management system in Hong Kong is still considered very effective, and this highly relies on the comprehensive management system and the compliance of the waste producer, collector, and treatment facility operator.
Regarding the clinical waste policy in India, biomedical waste management rules 1998 were established due to the frequency occurrence of contingent illness, but it still was a draft due to no agreement on classifications and criteria. The biomedical waste management rules of 2016 version brought out about a shift in the situation, and the government of India mainly used the information from these versions as its clinical waste policy. Clinical waste in India have 4 categories. First is the yellow batch, which collects humans or animals, and anatomical waste and use incineration and deep burial as the treatment. Next is the red bag, which is for recyclable contaminated waste such as plastic bags and sent to recycling after autoclaving. Then is white container, which collects waste sharps and will share or mutilations after dry heat sterilization. Finally, the blue bin, which collects gasware waste, will send to recycling after disinfections.
Now we will compare the policy in Hong Kong, China, and India. First, Hong Kong used waste disposal regulation to manage clinical waste from 1918. Next, China used Medical Waste Control Act 318 from 2003. Then, India used Biomedical Waste Route from 1998. This showed that Hong Kong started to manage clinical waste early.
In terms of categorization, Hong Kong has 7 clinical waste categories, China has 5 categories, while India has the largest total of 10 categories.
Finally, in parts of treatment method, China's and Hong Kong's are similar. They also use centralized disposal of clinical waste. Incineration is the most common treatment method to use. However, India used deep burial instead of incineration. This can reduce the harmful pollutants.
For waste storage in Hong Kong, healthcare professionals shall seal and label clinical waste containers and deliver them to an on-site storage area with specifications. China has an identical storage regulations where it is recommended to store the waste off-site instead of on-site. However, in India, the biomedical wastes are segregated into containers before they are transported, but shall only be labeled if they are transported outside of the premise where they are generated. When the wastes are ready to be collected, licensed collectors will be collecting the waste through authorized transit skips to licensed disposal facilities in Hong Kong, supported by a trip ticket system for record keeping. Similarly, in India, the biomedical waste shall be transported by a competent authority as specified by the government with vehicle under the Motor Vehicle Act within 48 hours, monitored through annual reports. However, China has a more lenient monitoring system of recommending the local government officials from health department to conduct a periodic inspection.
So let's move on to the conclusions. The clinical waste policy in Hong Kong is following the 5 key elements to attain the objectives. We divide the clinical waste to 6 groups and have more systematic process to treat the clinical waste. So in China, they divide the clinical waste to 5 groups. Also, they are similar to us that have systematical process of treating clinical waste. The last thing is they got huge number of medical waste disposal units. For the policy in India, they divide the clinical waste to 4 groups. However, they are having less proper treatment for clinical waste and their lack of funds to develop more treatment facilities. So in the end, their policy fall behind to other countries.
Thank you so much. This is the end of our presentation. So let's move on to the Q&A section.